Okay, so these are, that's as far as we're going with this for now. So I'm going to come out. This is the, remember how we got to this? We were in the matrix program. We had the natal chart. First we were at the menu we had here was, this menu was here, the standard, and you have the search menu. You want to do a transit search or progress search, you hit the search menu. You have the options. It doesn't matter which of these. If I hit 1 year, it comes up as 1 year. And it shows 1 year. And then we went into, I had my formats. I went into my specific format, the 90 years for Saturn or whatever. You can go into any one of those, in which case, if I did the, okay, this is just 2 years, my standard 2-year thing. Then if you wanted to edit it, you hit the re-enter search, and then you can start changing the dates, changing the years you want, and changing the options. You go into edit, and then you got to change it. You turn these off, these on. So it gives you all this information. So we got in here from hitting the search option in Matrix. It brought us up to this other menu here. We hit the 1 year, and then it took us into the search menu. And we're working in the search menu, which is no longer, it's like an app that's attached to the WinStar. It works through WinStar. If you try to run it by itself, it doesn't. It has funny things that happen. So you want to use this from inside WinStar. Okay, we're coming out of this. How are we doing for time? Yeah, okay, that's good. So we've got over 2 ways to do this calculation. One by using the sheets and just writing them in on the graph. 2 by using the computer printout. Using the sheets is actually faster, but it's more exactly accurate. You get a little bit more accurate picture. Either way is fine. It gets us, so the 90 years for Saturn, that's really useful. It saves a lot of going through the sheet. The printout is just writing, it gives the Saturn to itself, then the 90 years for Saturn to the sun, then the 90 years to the angles, to the ascendant, to the midheaven, and we got our graph. Okay, so this is, you got to get used to doing this. And then, where are we? Okay, now. So what we end up having, where are we here? Okay, now, make these smaller so we can see them together. So here's the 10-year graph. Here's the, this is what we need for a good interpretation of a natal chart. These 2 charts. I just have to mess around a bit because it's taking up my screen more. Let's see if I can get this over a bit more. Okay, good. There. Okay, so I want to have, we're going to use these 2 forms for transit case studies. We have the natal chart, we have our points totals. Okay, we've gone through the 30 steps and we looked through the chart. We have a sense of the chart. We've at least looked at the sun, moon, ascendant. We kind of look at what stands out in the chart. And you got to have a sense of that before you get to this. Once you know a planet is being hit in the natal chart, you have to know that planet deeply to see all the layers that can be affected by the planet making the aspect. And it will only hold for a certain amount of time. So this is showing the amount of time these aspects are critical. So here we've got, I chose, this is going back at another time. I have the newer one, but I wanted to use this one as an example. This is my chart as an example. Now the other thing we're going to have, let's come out of this, come back to this. I'm going to take it to sample timeline. This is a complicated timeline. It's my timeline, but I should have broken it down to 10 things, but I have something for almost every year, so I just pulled it out to use it for my life. And I'll put it here, so pull this in the background. So these are the things we have. Anytime we do someone's chart, I ask them for 5 or 10 dated major events in their life, the year, the month, and the event. It could be a big up, a big down, a move, a child born, a sickness, a death, a spaced out time, whatever. But it could be a season that you're spaced out or whatever. But I need to get the year. I want to get the anchors. I want some events so I can relate. I have the Saturn cycle. I can relate. As soon as I get any event, I can see whether Saturn's above or below the horizon, whether it's rising or setting, and see if it's near this, going towards the conjunction of the sun, whether it's going to the opposition, whether it's coming up to the midheaven or going down. I can see any event, I can now put an event on this wheel of Saturn and see the importance and the significance of that event and what the aspects were just happening, what's going to happen. So even looking at Saturn, like if I had my Saturn return coming up, looking at Saturn, wow, I'd have to, like it was up on my head, it's coming down, it's going to hit my ascendant, it's going down through the 12th house into my ascendant. Oh my goodness. But it came, there was a date that it was at my midheaven, was at the peak. Wow, peak from what? Oh, I'd have to go back and say when it hit this descendant, when it hit the IC. So the IC was the beginning of motivation that pushed all the way up through 25 years to get to the Saturn. So 15 years it goes up to your midheaven, and then it goes over, like, so you can see the timing, what happened then. And those things were still influencing my motives up for 20 some odd years. So you can start looking at event, and you can work this to see, well, that evolved because of this. This came because of this. You're coming from there. You're going to here. This was your last few crises. This is the next one. And this is what you're dealing with. You've got your time perspective to work a chart. Okay, so I've chosen the time when I got into astrology, when I found astrology. So this one is just an example. So it's not, we're not going to be, all the charts, you're going to have a basic 5 or 10 points of history. Then you're going to have a date that you have to do the consultation. So the date, if it's the end of say 69, it would be that year and the 3 years before. You know, 4 years before, 4 years ahead. You know, so often, usually the year you're in that you're asking a question, I put down below. In here, in this case, 1970. But I chose the time for when I got into astrology, how I found astrology, coming from the crazy world I was coming from. An interesting thing was, like, when I see this, I had no outer planet aspects going on in 66 and 67. I had a crazy life in 66. I was traveling, I was hitchhiking around, I was in Greenwich Village and Haight-Ashbury and down in Mexico. I'm traveling all around, but there were no big critical aspects on that. So I had adventures and Mars, Jupiter adventures, but really nothing that was a really critical extreme until I got to 68. And then things started to change really dramatically. I couldn't maintain the same lifestyle. It changed. But when I look at my history, let's see if I can get this a little smaller and we can still read it. Okay. I have 2 screens, so I usually have a bigger, I can spread it out and have it. But here is my history. So let's see, I'm born in 49, my brother was born. These are just dates going along. We're looking, starting from 66. Okay, we're starting from here, 65 up to 74. Okay. Okay, I'll just highlight this so we've got this to look at. Okay, so this is the 8-year period. Okay, I'm basically 64 to, now if I'm looking at this for Saturn on the 8-year graph, 1965, just before I was in second year of university and my parents split up and I was on my own. So 64, if I look around the wheel here, 64 was when Saturn hit my descendant. Well, it hit my descendant May, June 64, and I left, and then January, February 65. So it wasn't until at the end of the 65, I couldn't maintain. I left university. I left to travel, to leave home. I left the family, left the city. I went down to Greenwich Village and I started reading poetry, and it's just an old hippie. Anyways, that was when I left the family I grew up out of to go out into the world, and left the university and was on my own. So that was the Saturn. So I can see 65, 7 years. Then I really was back and forth through 65 in second year, but by the end of, I really gave up 2 years before the end, 2 months before the end of the thing. So that was my second year. That was the end of my university stay. But then, at 66, left university, worked coffee. I hitchhiking up to the West Coast in California. So through this whole period, till it comes up to the opposition, I'm just traveling. I'm not working, I'm traveling. I'm hitchhiking in California. I'm traveling down in Mexico. I'm just going back and forth. So 67 was a Mexico trip, 68. So, okay, you're seeing the whole 8-year period is 74, takes me up to just from the descendant to the period just past a couple of years past the midheaven. So building up the peak of status and accomplishment in the world. Okay, this is the phase, the 8-year phase that I'm working through. We're going to do this with everyone chart, see where they are, get a sense, get used to how valuable this little graph is. And then it's so it makes it, once you can do this, you're going to do this because it'll keep you solid and right on talking to a person when you're doing a consultation. So when I look at my history, 1967, I went down to 66, I was down, went to the West Coast. I met Prabhupada. That was the guy who started Hare Krishna. Then in 67, I went down to Mexico, back to Canada, down to Mexico. Then I've been in the mountains. I came back to the States and met Prabhupada, the guy who started Hare Krishna again. And I came home to Montreal to work at Expo 67. And I just, at the end of this, I didn't feel like, at first there was a lot of excitement being at home, around meeting people in California. You know, it was all the beautiful people going to San Francisco. It was a great time. It really wasn't, but it was a free time. Nobody's telling me what to do. But finally, it became a chaotic time, and all the hippie things became more bikers and gangs and more dangerous. And I was disenchanted. I came back to Montreal. I worked at Expo 67. In November, I left by ship for England. Okay. I was going to England. I was hoping eventually to get to India, but it was really to get to England first of all. But 67, so that's a big chunk, November 67. So we go along here, and the first dates here are June 68. And the next point on this, on my Saturn graph, is coming up to the opposition to my sun. So it's not boding really well. I'm going out far away, but I'm like, it's opposing my sun. It's not I have a lot of restrictions. I have to bide my time. Nothing's working for me so much during that time. So I went to Mexico. So you wonder, going to India at that time? You wouldn't necessarily suggest it to someone. When I look at the 8-year graph, 66, 67, no big major aspects. I was just traveling, going around, not accomplishing, not doing anything, just gaining experience, meeting people, traveling around. But for me, they were very vivid, formative times that some of the ideas and things I ran across affected me for a long time. But really, I was identified to the hippie culture at the time, and I became disenchanted as it became violent and really grungy. And I got disenchanted, and then I didn't know who I was. I felt lost. And by November, I took a boat to go to England because I didn't want to be here. I was going to try and go to England and then make it to India. But I left. I had the boat fare and had $200. I got to England. So that was in November. Spent about a month or so, really lonely month or so in England and delivering handbills and stuff. So